So in this video I played Resident Evil 7 Biohazard in 2023 for the first time. As I've already done with all the other games in the franchise, I'll be giving an overall review and my thoughts on the game to let you know if it's worth checking out now, 6 years later from its release in 2017. Now this is the penultimate game in the series for me to check out, as the recent entry RE Village is up next. So if you go on to enjoy or find this video helpful, then let me know by tapping that like button down below, and if you enjoy story games then I have various reviews on the channel that you can check out if you would like. But for now, let's jump into Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, starting off with the gameplay. Now I must say before I mention anything, this is by far the scariest Resident Evil game yet that I've played, and as from this series I've checked out all the core entries in just under a month. Before starting my playthrough I did hear very good things about this game, and how it apparently saved the franchise, so I already had high hopes, and as soon as I started playing I realised why. You start off in a first person view which is already totally different and brand new from all the other games. It instantly changes the mood and immersion of the game. It's similar gameplay to 2, as in you have to backtrack through very enclosed spaces and long narrow hallways, which I loved, and I believe that's what Resident Evil was meant to be like. In RE2 your main goal was to investigate the RPD office and explore it, but then quickly after you encounter all the creepy and dangerous living things there, you then switch the goalpost to simply escape the building unharmed, and that's exactly the same in RE7, so I was hooked right away. The only thing this time is that it's 10 times scarier in first person. You feel like you're in the game and become fully immersed into it. Before I had even met any of the family members or encountered a jump scare due to the creepy noises, incredibly dark yet so realistic lighting to enhance that mood and eeriness of the house, and of course the incredible detail, the rotten food for the family. Of course I wouldn't say human intestines is food, but the attention to detail that makes the room so disgusting, with mess everywhere and dirt spread across everything, down to the animation when opening doors, like in the fridge, and the food would stick to the door and then stretch when you slowly open it. Honestly incredible yet so horrific. It's hard to believe that this game released in January 2017, because it still does hold up really well now, and better than many games that have released in the last year or so. Of course, when you meet with the family, who I'll talk more about in story later, you spend a good amount of time trying to run away or hide from them, meaning that you have to rely on the sounds of their footsteps and voices that become increasingly closer and was so scary. Once again, this first person view does emphasize that terrifying feeling, because you physically have to turn around to see if they're behind you. You also can't really look around corners without revealing yourself, etc. Even though this is quite early on in the game, I had to pause the game multiple times and take a breather or just half look at the screen. I was just blown away so early on in the game, and instantly knew that this game is probably the scariest one yet, even 7 entries into the series. In terms of the gunplay, it's still very straightforward and very similar to all the remakes. The guns feel like they have weight to them and recoil, but it still allows for very easy use when shooting, and after a while you get to grips with it, with the variety of weapons and the enemies. The enemies themselves are basically what makes it hard, and some take so long to die, which is sort of a running theme in a lot of the games, and I suppose it allows for more of a challenge, though after a while there's not really much else you can do to counter these enemies that makes it quicker to take them down, as it's all sort of to do with their health. There's a good amount of them that seem to have so much. I'm aware you don't want it too easy and quick, as there's really not a lot of point in combat, but then you also don't want it to be repetitive, which was sort of the case as I mentioned. This also means you have to be careful with your ammo and items you hold to craft more ammo and health kits, which does emphasize more of that tactical thinking playstyle, seen more in the older games, which is really good. The items and scraps are very common, meaning you do see yourself using the crafting system a lot, even though it follows the same if not more simple route we've seen before. But as the enemies may take a good while to take down and enclose you with the way they attack, it's crucial to have spare items and ammo, which hasn't been seen for a while, so I'm glad they returned back to this gameplay style. And that's mixed with the puzzles as well, which have a lot of variety to them. The different type of weapons as well also allow for a more strategic playstyle, meaning as you play and loot even more, this allows for you to counter enemies more efficiently. The variety in enemy types and boss fights as you progress are really good and different, from them all having their own attacking style and speed, unlike in RE5 for example, where it seemed like there wasn't really any thought in the boss fights and didn't fit that well, from the placement of them all and how they just been thrown in there at random points, as well as them becoming quite repetitive. In this game they all feel so unique and require a lot of thinking, as I mentioned, as well as all of them being a lot more terrifying. Now we move on to the story of RE7. So the story follows the main protagonist of Ethan Winters, who goes looking for Mia, his missing wife, who's been gone since 2014, this game being set in 2017. This was after she went on a trip and is now most likely dead, but Ethan is still determined to look for her, and he's now been sent an email from her on where she is. For some reason he goes by himself and has to explore this creepy house in Louisiana where she's known to be. So just like in RE2 for example, it's a typical survival horror story, which by itself some may love just like me, and others may like a bit more, but the thing is this game it has way more to uncover under the surface than RE2. Even though the overall plot sounds simple in both games, there's many deep meanings and connections that you find out as you progress further, which I loved. The house Mia is known to be in contains the Baxter family, who are the main antagonists of the game, basically an insane psychotic family who have been known to murder people, and you actually learn about this through the random letters and newspapers dotted throughout the house, reports of missing people and what the family are like. But one of the biggest aspects of this narrative is how you learn about the family's backstory and history, basically figuring out why they are like this and try to kill everyone. There's so many VHS tapes and phone calls you encounter and gives lots of information about them, but not too much to the point where it doesn't become a mystery only until the very end. Just so much unique and interesting moments filled in this game that, unlike RE5 and 6, actually feels like a survival horror game that has all the content you need balanced perfectly. Another point to mention is that the story is only 9 hours long, which is quite short, but the whole entire time I was gripped and immersed into everything. That I didn't really mind, because I feel like if they tried too hard to extend the length, then there was bound to be some slightly boring fillers and repeated moments, so it's a good choice to leave it just perfect. As I mentioned with the gameplay, that also emphasises this typical survival horror game, and everything feels a lot more scary and survival based, which a lot of people love. Of course there is action, but they balanced it incredibly well, with a lot more towards the end of the game as you venture outside more, which I was fine with, as the overall amount is enough and expected. The protagonist of Ethan isn't really anything special at the start, because he's just an ordinary guy who isn't all that experienced like Leon in the later games, for example, but just simply on a mission to find his wife, not really knowing he would get into all of this, though his wife told him to stay away for obvious reasons. Either way, as you do progress further, it's clear that he is so determined to just be back with his wife, even after everything he witnesses, pushing himself even more and more through every terrifying encounter, just so he can move forward, turning himself into a much stronger person, but also you as a player feel just like him as you play. Of course the first person view does help with that, and with other first person games it's always heavily reliant on the other characters, like the side cast and antagonists for example. Some do a great job and others not so much, but with this game of course the Baxter family is top tier and really no complaints at all, but also because he pushes through everything, becoming increasingly closer. He starts to become very likeable as a character, as you can sort of relate to him with this mindset he has, managing his actions more as he goes. And that's where I end my review of Resident Evil 7 Biohazard in 2023. This game without a doubt still holds up now, and that's with everything: the return to a way more survival horror narrative, but with a lot more layers to uncover, mixed with the older gameplay style that emphasises this horror and terrifying unease you get instantly as you start playing, for me at least, and the incredible visuals in the game that makes this world hold up so well in present day. This is definitely one of the easiest decisions for if you should check it out, and it was clear that this game was a must play in the series. So if you did enjoy or find this review helpful, then let me know by tapping that like button down below, and if you like story games, then that's what this channel is all about, with an array of videos on a bunch, and a playlist should be in the description down below for a random series if you'd like to check it out. Now this does mean that the final entry in the series, RE Village, is up next, so I'm excited for that one. Until then, bye bye.